Hello, sweet ones, and welcome to this week's episode of Embodied Divinity. I'm so grateful you're here. Let's begin by taking a deep breath together. Inhale through your nose, hold, and exhale through your mouth. Let's do one more big, deep breath in through your nose and exhale. Let it land you right here, right now. Today, I'm going to share my real life unfolding of this past week and what it taught me about surrender and my power. So, as you tune in, as you listen, just allow yourself to receive whatever is meant for you. So, on last week's episode, you heard me say that when you were listening, I would be celebrating mine and my daughter's birthday in Hawaii. A trip I was very much looking forward to. And I thought about going back and editing that episode because we didn't end up going. You'll find out why here in a minute. But then I just thought, oh, it would be so much more authentic and genuine if I just allowed it to be what it was. And so the night before or like the morning, I guess, 2 a.m, right before we were supposed to fly out, I got a phone call from my dad. And my phone's always on Do Not Disturb, which meant he had to call me twice in a row for it to go through. And I look at my phone and I see his name on my caller ID, and immediately I panic because I'm just like, oh no, what happened? So I take a deep breath. I answer the phone. He tells me that something was wrong with my mom. She's headed in for emergency surgery. And I just like, everything just stopped. And he said, they were supposed to go to Hawaii with me and my kids. And they said, you guys go to Hawaii and I'll take care of your mom and whatever. And I instantly was like, absolutely not. I can't get on a plane and go to Hawaii and like knowing my mom's going into surgery or whatever. So I hang up the phone. I'm preparing to pack up there a little over an hour away. So I'm packing up my stuff and getting ready to head out and go to the hospital where my mom is. And I'm worried about her. And then I also just get this really icky feeling, like so much sadness and disappointed because I was really looking forward to this trip and this time with my kids and just time to step away from it all. And so there's all this disappointment. And I wake up my kids in the middle of the night to let them know that we're not going. And I help them deal with their disappointment, but also their fear about my mom. And I get in the car and I call the airlines and I cancel the tickets. And anyways, I'm feeling all these feelings. And the thought that keeps popping in, like I'll feel the angst, I'll feel the anxiety, I'll feel the sadness. And then immediately there's this overwhelming inner knowing, this is happening for you. And then I'll feel this calm, this peace, and then something will happen and I'll get like lost in the feelings again. And again, this is happening for you. So by the time I got to the hospital, I was deeply surrendered. I knew that we weren't meant to go to Hawaii at that time. I knew I was meant to be right here with my mom. Obviously, I was because it's what was happening in that moment. And if you've been here for a while, you know our biggest thing is we don't argue with life unfolding for us. That only creates suffering. So I'm deeply surrendered. My mom ended up being fine. She had her appendix burst and they removed it. And I was there with her the whole time, which meant so much to her. And once she was released and doing well, I went back home. And it's when I went back home, I had gone almost 40 hours without sleeping. And, I was just kind of holding it together in this faith. And I totally fell apart the moment I walked through the door. I have rarely let my kids see me cry. Not because I don't want them to know I'm vulnerable, but because I don't want them to ever feel responsible for helping me. But I'm walking the door and I can't hold it back. And my son gives me a hug and I said, I'm not okay now, but I will be. I'm just going to go in my room and take care of myself. And I just fell apart for a couple hours. There was no story. It was just all the emotions of the previous 40 hours. And I was so intentional. I let myself rest that whole day. I had a deep night's sleep. And I just decided this is happening for me. And so I'm going to be so intentional with this week. I ended up turning it into kind of a staycation for myself where I didn't do anything other than what brought absolute joy or ease in that moment. And for me, that looked like a lot of processing. It looked like a lot of going inward. It looked like a lot of breathing and stretching and walking and just being, listening to books, reading books, watching my favorite shows. It was just a total week of surrender. And as I'm sinking into that, right, we've talked about surrender so many times, and it was this really beautiful lived experience. And it was amidst all of that that something started to crack open in me. One of the feelings I had when I got home was this sense of aloneness. Like, I had spent 2 weeks preparing for this trip because as an only parent, it's a lot to take. I had to arrange things for the dogs, clean my house, get myself packed, get my kids packed, get all of like the recordings and the offerings done 2 weeks in advance, get all my clients taken care of, make sure that their appointments were good for the week that I got home. Like there was so much. And so, like the night before, when I had finished and I was like, yes, tomorrow is Hawaii, I kind of let myself just like breathe and then to jump right back into taking care of my mom and making sure my dad was fed and making sure everybody knew what was going on and keeping myself strong. I was holding and holding and holding. And amidst all of that, I'm watching my family members lean into their spouses and their partners and taking turn with the kids and all of that. And I got home and it was just this weight of like being by myself again, of going and taking care of myself, putting myself together, making sure my kids were okay, coming back to myself, making sure it was good, making sure the house was okay and the dogs were okay. And it was like this grief that went through my whole system. And it was in that moment that something really cracked open. It showed me how much I've still centered men or relationships emotionally, energetically, spiritually, even in my own healing, like this constant longing and wanting. And not that there's anything wrong with wanting, it's still something I desire. But when everything was stripped away, I was left with the truth that I really have become my own love of my life. The one that I had waited for so long, the one who shows up, the one who listens, the one who holds, the one who heals. And in that moment, there was so much beauty in it, not a bitterness, not a rejection of love, but a deep knowing that I had fully returned to me. And it was in that knowing that something deeper surrendered within me. This need to have anything outside of anything that I had created. And I think we do that as humans. We're always longing or looking or waiting for the next best thing or the next chapter or the next achievement or whatever it is. And it was just this really beautiful, deep surrender into self. And what I noticed was all of these thoughts moving through my head of what success really looked like to me now versus what it used to. It used to look like massive wealth and total time freedom and having a partner and all of these things, which are still beautiful things and things I know I'll get to experience in my own way in time. And I had this feeling of a different kind of success, if that's what we want to call it. And that was becoming someone that I could count on. All of the choices that I've made every single day for years to nurture my mind, my body, my spirit, to show up for this work, to create these offerings, the consistency, the dedication, the discipline I've cultivated on my own. And I think so often we take these things that seem so small for granted, and we don't really see the power in them because there's this whole external and societal idea of what success or achievement is supposed to look like. And it was this really stripped down version of empowerment and inner authority that just felt so natural and primal and wild. And I was very aware that we're in the days leading to the spring equinox, a sacred season of rebirth, of letting the old fall away, of coming back to the life. And it's just wild to me how nature mirrors our internal wounds, how we have this opportunity when we can really surrender and be intentional, right? I had this opportunity where I had this whole week of being able to go inward and feel the whole rupture, the rupture of the aloneness, and turn it into this really beautiful alchemized version of self-love. Just like the earth, we bloom again and again, but only after the darkness, only after the pause, only after the surrender, only after what no longer serves us really finally dissolves away. The season that we're in right now is asking us, can we trust what's being cleared? And then can we trust what is emerging? And the only reason I was able to really shed this last final layer of this longing for relationship, and again, not from a sense of a closed off heart. I'm very open and ready for it whenever and if ever it decides to enter my life, but in a way now that it's not something that is on my mind. Like I feel really, really solid in and of myself because I was able to see so clearly the way that in one really hard moment in my life, that was one of the first thoughts I had was, why isn't there someone else here? And instead shift that into this deep, beautiful, sacred self-love. And so we have to be able to surrender to whatever is happening for us and be in total radical acceptance of the here and now, even if it's not necessarily what our ego desires and even the desires of our heart, because we can trust that we're being led in perfect and divine timing. It's not always graceful to surrender. It looks like sobbing at midnight, canceling plans that felt like lifelines, sitting in the dark, unsure of the next step. It's uncomfortable and unyielding, but it's also magic. Because on the other side of surrender, there is a softness, a tenderness, peace, clarity, and a kind of love you didn't know you could give yourself. Surrender says, I trust life enough to stop fighting it. One of the things I did in the aftermath of everything that unfolded was I lit candles, I cried. I sat in a sacred shower. It would have been a bath, but I don't have one in my home. I prayed not for answers, but for presence. Because self-devotion doesn't mean perfection. It means you meet yourself again and again and again where you're at. Before the world asks you, before your inbox, before the lovers, you start with you. I scheduled myself an appointment at a bathhouse, and as I sat there, I told myself, I release everything that's standing in my way of standing fully in my power. I release every fear, every doubt, every limiting belief that might be blocking me from the desires of my heart. And I surrender deeply and unequivocally into this moment. Then I said it over and over and over again as I sat in the steam room. I found my power in a cold plunge. I let myself melt in a warm bath. And it was really interesting because so that was kind of like my final day of this releasing, of this intentionality behind clearing this wound and really allowing myself to be with what unfolded the days before, releasing my expectations. I rescheduled my trip to Hawaii. Everything worked out perfect. We get to go in May. And when I woke up the next morning, there was this event that I had been planning, and it hadn't had anyone sign up yet, which was totally fine with me. I was unattached, but I woke up the next morning from the um after the bathhouse, and I had a text from the venue owner, and she said, "Hey, event sold out overnight and you have 17 on the wait list." And I was just like, this is it. This is the magic. This is the way the universe shows up for you fully when you can just be with all that life is serving you, all that is happening for you, whether it's icky sticky or ooey gooey or joy filled or hard. And when we can really be in the intention and really choose to alchemize and create beauty from what might be really uncomfortable, life has this way of just surprising us and knocking us off of our feet in pure ecstasy and pleasure. So I want to ask you, and this is the questions that I want you to take with you this week. Where in your life are you resisting what's falling away? What would happen if you stopped trying to make it work and just let go? What could be birthed if you surrendered? Let this week be your personal equinox. Let yourself shed. Let yourself rise. You don't need to go somewhere to find yourself. You are here and you are more than enough. This week I have some really beautiful offerings. On Wednesday, you'll receive a morning ritual meditation that calls for the return to self. It's so beautiful and so tender. On Friday, there's a deep, soothing sleep meditation for surrendering into the night. You'll also see on my Substack articles about becoming the love of your life, a playlist and ritual guide for your own equinox altar, and daily inspiration on my Substack notes and my YouTube channel for just really deepening into this process. Like I've said before, this platform and the way that I'm showing up now is designed to give you the tools to breathe in the medicine and the healing with every theme of the week. So if this week's theme and my shares resonated with you, then soak it all up. Allow yourself to be intentional in this energy. And by the end of these shared offerings, you'll feel that alignment and wholeness deep within. I want you to remember you are never too much and you are not forgotten. You are being guided even in the dark. Let's take a deep breath together. Inhale through your nose and exhale. Until next time, love yourself fiercely. And remember that sometimes the redirection is the miracle. Namaste.